my position, which is I see nothing wrong with asking people to produce IDs when they vote. Okay, it may or may not be good policy, but it's not evil policy. We can argue around the details of whether the costs and benefits outweigh each other, but I don't see anything wrong. Neither do I see some plot. You know, I mean, let me just finish this, because the Voting Rights Act is going to be a subject of debate going forward, the continuation of the Voting Rights Act. And this whole regime that we've been in since 1965 of trying to ensure equal access to the ballot box for people based upon race and ethnicity in the face of a history of voter suppression, we're 50 years beyond that now. And this language that every time somebody changes a rule that affects voting that might be calculated to adversely impact the Democratic Party, then they're engaging in some kind of evil civil rights undermining, racistly motivated impediment to democracy is just an anachronism. It no longer actually characterizes what's going on, it seems to me. So, you know, I just hold my wallet when I hear you guys shrieking about how the Republicans are trying to keep people from voting. There's an election. Right, well, everybody wants to turn out their base. That's all. And you know, whatever. Okay.
No. But there's a big difference between wanting to turn out your base and trying to prevent the other guy's base from voting. Right? The Democrats, right? The absentee voters tend to be upper income and therefore tend to be Republican. I am not aware of any, and there's lots of absentee voter fraud. Right? It's very easy to vote two places given absentee voting. You know, it's not a big problem for the political system, but the fraud certainly exists. And Democrats could certainly do themselves a favor by disenfranchising Republicans who can't be home on Election Day because they're out on their business trip.
They wouldn't be doing themselves a favor. If they came out against absentee voting, somebody would point out that that's the way military officers participate in an election when they're deployed abroad, and they would get slammed at the polls. And that's the reason they're not doing it, Mark. The reason they're not doing it is not because they're more virtuous than anybody else. They've made the calculation and figured out it's not a winner for them. The Democrats will do anything to get elected. I mean, okay.
You could certainly allow absentee votes for military only, right? I mean, not complicated there. But in fact, we've had nationwide in Republican states only, right? No state with a Democratic majority has decided this was a good idea. Republican states only
have decided that what's a good idea? I'm sorry.
Requiring not just an ID, a state-issued photo ID to vote on Election Day. Right? This will, in fact, disenfranchise people who've been voting for decades. Lots of elderly people. Disenfranchise?
Well,
lots of elderly people.
It will not disenfranchise them. Mark, come on, will you just watch your language?
No.
All we're asking you to do is go over to the RMV, stand in line for 30 minutes, and get the ID.
Well,
that's not disenfranchisement. Well, I'm sorry. It is not disenfranchising.
Right, so it turns out to be a little bit more complicated than that, in fact. So, I don't know about where you live. Where I live, a trip to the DMV is not a 30-minute exercise, even if there happens to be a DMV office convenient to you. Of course, if you don't have a driver's license, that means you don't drive. Most DMV offices are not actually accessible by public transit. So it's not clear how people are supposed to get to the DMV. When they get to the DMV, they will be charged $35 or $50. Sounds to me a lot like a poll tax, right?
Let the Service Employees International Union hire some buses to take them to the DMV. I'm sure that they've got the funds set aside for it.
Well, and in fact, a lot of...
it's not disenfranchisement.
No, wait a second. And the SEIU is also supposed to pay the $50. Right? People are being charged for the right to vote. People who've been voting for years are being required to get a document that the state charges for. And in lots of states, in order to get your driver's license, you have to produce your birth certificate. Now, look, you and I both have a birth certificate available because, you know, we have passports and we have to have it to get a passport. Some guy living in Philadelphia who was born in Alabama is going to have a hard time getting his birth certificate when Alabama won't give you your birth certificate without a driver's license to prove that you're you.
I don't know the empirical magnitude of the problems that you're talking about, and if I could be persuaded that they were sufficiently large, I myself personally might think it's not a good idea to put this particular requirement on a voter. I'm not certain about
20% of African American adults do not have a valid photo ID according to the law.
What I'm certain of, Mark, is that this policy debate doesn't involve suppression or disenfranchisement of people's rights to vote. It involves setting the parameters that govern voting, which are more or less disadvantageous to different people depending upon their situation, and about which rational arguments can be made to either side.
Well, so